the programme. Now, my next guest has been described as Britain's real-life Rain Man. He's one of less than 50 people in the world with Savant syndrome, an extremely rare form of autism. Now, he struggles with social interaction, finds emotions difficult to understand, and has trouble telling left from right. On the other hand, he can learn a foreign language in a week, sees numbers as colours, and can do mind-boggling maths in his head. And interestingly, for a man with such a logical and literal way of thinking, he's also someone with a strong religious faith. And I'm very pleased to welcome Daniel Tammet. How are you, Daniel? Good?
I'm very well, thank you.
Excellent. I wondered, because Savant syndrome is not something that we're all, extremely familiar with. Maybe you'd explain it from inside your head what it is.
It's a form of autism. It's a very rare form of autism. And the type of autism I have, fortunately, is a very mild, high-functioning form. So I've learned to work around the things that I find very difficult. At the same time, because it's a neurological condition, so it affects the brain, it affects the way that the brain develops, it brings out different abilities as well as disabilities. And in my case, I have very high abilities in numbers and in languages.
How do you see the numbers in your head?
Numbers, to me, every number up to 10,000 has its own shape, its own colour, its own texture. The number 37, for example, is lumpy like porridge. The number 89 is a kind of falling misty snow. When I do multiplications in my head, I see the shapes and colours dance and move together, and the different ways that the shapes pull together create new shapes, and I read the numbers out of the different shapes
So
I see.
do you just get that answer instantly almost?
Yes, it's a very...
You just see it?
It's spontaneous. It's a very visual way of doing mathematics.
And when you learn a language in a week, I mean, that is pretty phenomenal. Are you, again, just seeing it? Is it like a photographic scanning almost?
Yes, it's very visual. Words, like numbers, have colours and textures, and I'm able to associate different emotions with the colours and the textures I see in my mind. So when I'm learning a language, I'm listening, of course, to how it's pronounced, but at the same time I'm doing a lot of reading, because I'm trying to absorb as much of the patterns as possible.
So you see the words as colours.
Yes.
Give me an example.
Well, Icelandic, which is a language I had to learn in 7 days for a documentary programme at broadcast last year, for example, the word röka, which means sunset in Icelandic, it's a red word. Words begin with the letter R, always red to me. And I imagine a crimson blood sunset, the way that it forms a very dark red colour, and I can make the association between the colour that I see for the word and the colour for sunset.
And you also like ritual, don't you? You like things like, you like your tea at a particular time.
Ritual is very important for people on the autistic spectrum, because it gives us a sense of order and pattern and a relief from sensory overload. One of the things that we find very difficult is the brain usually will filter out extraneous noise and colour and so forth, but in autistic people that doesn't happen. You have too much information at one time going into the head, and so what you do is you find oases of calm and peace and tranquility, and those are patterns and routines that you use to soothe yourself.
See, it's fascinating because you're a very logical person in your mind, and you see everything sort of very clearly. You say you like ritual, and yet you've arrived at a faith. You became a Christian a couple of years back.
Yes.
Do you like the ritual in a way of, say, church?
I do.
How important is that?
Very important. I think I obviously have approached faith from a very intellectual perspective. I read a lot as a child, and in particular the writings of an author called G.K. Chesterton really spoke to me a great deal. He had an incredible mind and approached Christianity in a similar way, a very intellectual approach to concepts like the Incarnation and the Trinity, which all of us wrestle with. For me, personally, on a personal level, I found just being human very difficult. For a long time I had no sense of myself as a person. I had no sense of other people as having thoughts and emotions and ideas like I had. It wasn't until the age of 8 or 9 that I had any friends at all. Before then, numbers were my friends. They were the things that I would play with. And then I suddenly started to feel an emotion that I realised was loneliness, and I wanted to relate to people. And later on in coming to Christianity, I realised that in the concept of a God that literally comes to us in human form and lives a human life, I can understand the concept of love as being tangible. It's not just an abstract thing. It's a tangible relating to someone in their uniqueness, in their difference.
For example, when you were at school, when you were very young, were you taught religion in school? I mean, did you rate religion in any way? Did you understand it in any way?
No, not at all. The way that it was taught meant that I had no relationship with it whatsoever. For me, I could only understand things that were tangible. And to me, numbers were tangible. I could picture them and see them in my head and experience them in a very distinctive way.
And what difference has finding Christianity and finding a partner in life? You find love as well, pretty well at the same time.
Yes.
What difference has that made to your life and how you cope with life and how you cope with your Savant syndrome?
I think for me, before I found faith and before I found love as well, it's kind of like having a dislocated soul. You feel yourself apart from everyone and everything around you, and it's profoundly lonely. When I fell in love, all of a sudden life became meaningful. It pulled the pieces of my soul together and made me feel whole for the first time in my life, made me feel human. And finding God has been another step in that journey. It's something that I'll always live with. I'll always be autistic to an extent, but it's something that I can share with others.
And you've had to teach yourself, for example, to look people in the eye, because that's one of the aspects, isn't it, of autism? You find it hard to relate to people. So you've had to teach yourself social skills in that sense.
Yes, I mean, in my book, Born on a Blue Day, what I do is I describe emotions, how I understand emotions. I use numbers. I've used numbers for a long time. The number 6, for example, is a very tiny, dark, cold number. So when I'm being in a conversation with someone and they're describing sadness, they're in a very sad situation, I imagine myself inside a number 6, and it gives me that feeling of what it is to be sad.
Daniel, it's wonderful to talk to you,
Thank you.
and I wish you the very best. I know your book's already gone into the bestsellers list,
Yes.
and it's a fascinating study.
Thank you.
So thank you very much indeed for joining us
Thank
on
you
Heaven
very
and
much.
Earth. Now, my next guest